Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today it is episode 116, where we are talking Lee Cronin's The Mummy, another reboot in the Mummy franchise after the failed Tom Cruise attempt way back in like 2017. I'll be very upfront with this franchise. I have zero connection to it. I was not a fan of these movies as kids, so I had no skin in the game, I guess you could say. I saw it last night, late night showing at 9:20 p.m. after a long week on set, setting up for a production and doing a production. So I was tired, but I still went and saw it. It's now a lovely Saturday morning here in Toronto, and I have lots of thoughts about it. But before I get into all of my thoughts about Lee Cronin's The Mummy, of course, timestamps below. If you don't want anything spoiled for you because you are going to see this movie or you're waiting to watch it, don't listen to the spoiler section. Just listen to the non-spoiler section, as I say every week. Also, next week I will probably upload a new YouTube video. I am going to a big movie store this Sunday because it's my birthday, and I plan on buying a little laundry list of items that I have that I've really wanted, and I hope they have in stock. So I'm going to do a little YouTube video walkthrough of all the stuff that I buy. I'm planning on really splurging, so look forward to that. But as for today, of course, we are going to have the news section. We have a lot to cover. It was CinemaCon this weekend. I'm going to wait to talk about CinemaCon. I have a video that I'm going to post on social media, so you can check out all my thoughts on CinemaCon and what we saw throughout the week, which was a lot of fun. But today we're going to have other news stories, then we're going to have the non-spoiler section, and then the spoiler section. So timestamps below so you can jump around, listen to whatever else you want. But here we go. Let's jump into the news. Our first piece of news comes from Variety, who say A24's dark comedy The Drama has earned $8.7 million in its second weekend, now in its third weekend on release, dropping only 38% from its debut. The R-rating film starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson has grossed $30 million domestically, $65 million worldwide, and it cost less than $28 million to produce. It's currently at $57 million worldwide, so I do see a world where it kind of finishes in the 70 range, or maybe the upper 60s, and that's really good for a rated R sort of skewered rom-com that a lot of people were very confused about. And it's been really cool to see the online reaction to this movie, because I didn't really anticipate so many people to love it the way they did. Like, it's been way more positive than I ever would have thought. I thought there would be a big hubbubaloo online of people being like, oh my god, it's so controversial, or I hated it. And there were some of those reactions, but I think it was way more positive than I ever would have anticipated. I was frankly shocked by how many people were just like, yeah, I think it's smart, I think it's well acted, I enjoyed it as a film and its subject matter, and they didn't get like lost up in maybe the politics of it. I don't think this movie is even that complicated. Like, I keep saying it's complicated, but I think it's just sort of morally challenging or testing for a lot of people. And like, I've had very civilized conversations about it with several people who have seen it, saying like, oh yeah, there's just so much fun stuff in it, and there's so many things that you can really take away from the movie and talk about and be comfortable with. And a lot of people are in alignment, strangely enough, which rarely happens with movies, that everybody's sort of aligned in who is the worst character, what people are supposed to take away from it, what this movie is trying to say about certain issues. I'm very happy that it's not really spoiling the secret or the twist, or I guess it's sort of the premise to the drama of what Emma's big secret is. I'm happy that we're kind of keeping it on wraps and the internet isn't running away with it completely yet. It's kind of fun when people are letting others have fun with a movie before we just spoil it on the very next Monday, because there's so many movies when, spoiler alert, I knew going into The Force Awakens that Han Solo dies, because on Twitter I stupidly saw a tweet and it was a frame of Han Solo getting a lightsaber through his chest. But this entire movie's premise is based on a spoiler and a twist and trying to remain hidden. So I appreciate very much that the internet is kind of being cool about this. Everyone's really labeling the spoilers like, okay, I'm going to talk about the drama, don't look at what I'm about to say. And I just think that's a very classy thing to do, because sometimes the internet is a little bit more cruel and likes to just sort of give away things about movies. But it's fun to see this movie doing so well at the box office. I think it's one of A24's most successful films, if I'm not mistaken. Like, every single thing I've seen about the box office and the financials of this movie is just like record, or it's like a top 3 at least. And that's fun to see, because it is an original property. People are yearning for rom-com rom-coms or yearning for sort of more complex movies that are going to make you think really hard and react in the moment. Like it was such a fun movie to watch, discuss, think about. Everything about it I've kind of been in love with, and I really, really, really did enjoy it. It's my second favorite movie of the year. If you haven't, go back, listen to the episode where I talked about the drama, because I think it is just such a stellar movie. I think it's just so good, so well written, not that complicated or hard to buy into. Really, really fun movie. Go check that out. Let's get into our next story though. Mark Ruffalo, Kristen Stewart, Joaquin Phoenix, and Lily Gladstone are just a few of the names who have signed onto an open letter opposing Paramount's proposed merger with Warner Brothers Discovery, calling the transaction one that will threaten the sustainability of the entire creative community. Other signatories include Noah Wyle, Rose Byrne, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Denis Villeneuve, Javier Bardem, J.J. Abrams, Emma Thompson, Sandra Huller, and Rami Youssef. And I know that petitions and everything can only go so far. Like just this week, Christopher Nolan's wife, Emma, is her last name Thomas? It's not Emma Thompson, because that's Emma Thompson, but she was saying like, oh, petitions only go so far and we're going to have no effect and stuff like that. It's really sort of disheartening, and that real official people need to step in, or it's already a done deal, is what someone else at that conversation said. And I cannot remember who it is for the life of me, but really disheartening stuff to hear in my opinion. But I like the action from people in the industry with 3,000 or more signatures of very powerful people who are very opinionated. Like that's how the strikes were resolved, because they pushed back and they made change. And I know that we're, sort of coming up to the renewal, and we might be seeing more strikes, or we might have new deals that are going to be difficult, as Sean Astin's talked about at the Oscars and in all of his interviews. But that's part of it. You have to renegotiate the deal. So I am hopeful that maybe this could move the needle a little bit. Will it? I really cannot predict anything. I have no clue what's going to happen with the Paramount Warner Brothers deal. I keep my fingers crossed every single day that something more official can come in, whether it is a government body or the US government actually doing something. But it seems like Trump is very best friends with David Ellison and is absolutely fine with the Paramount deal. Maybe he'll even get some slice of it. Like it's just such a strange situation, and it feels very doom and gloom. I read the open letter that they wrote, and it's every point that everybody has been talking about, and there's just so many alarm bells. Like who would think this is a good thing other than the CEOs who are going to make millions of dollars off of it? And even if it doesn't go through, tons of people are still going to make a bunch of money. Like David Zaslav's going to make $7 billion for Warner Brothers, and then they're going to get back to work. It's mind-boggling to me how much money is invested in this, and that if it goes through as well, how many jobs are going to be lost. Like just this week, Marvel, they cut, I think, something like 10,000 jobs. Maybe that's too high of a number, but they cut their entire, home entertainment division, their visual development division, just really crazy departments that you would think are very important to these types of studios. And yet they are completely gutted and they're all gone. And that is extremely disheartening to me, because people who have been there for over a decade, really, like the home entertainment team, I know, and the visual development team, both of those crews have been there for 10 plus years, and Marvel just lays them off on a random week when, I mean, they've had a lot of success recently with Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four. It seems like people are getting more into these movies again after losing the public favor, and they showed a trailer obviously at CinemaCon, and people were kind of going nuts for it a little bit on the internet. People who did see it said like, oh my God, it's crazy seeing all these characters together. So just an odd time to make these kind of bloodthirsty CEO divisions. But then again, when we have the larger issue of Paramount Warner Brothers at play and that possibly going through, there's a lot of that stuff going around in Hollywood right now, of one company buying another company, people getting laid off, people struggling to pay the bills. So it's disheartening. I'm hoping that letters like this could make a difference, but let's move into our next story for now. Production has started in LA on season 2 of Prime Video spy drama series Mr. and Mrs. Smith from Amazon MGM Studios and New Regency. Season 1 stars Maya Erskine and Donald Glover are back, with Erskine also joining Glover as an executive producer for season 2. The duo are believed to be reprising their roles as John Smith and Jane Smith. To what extent is unclear. As previously reported, a new younger John and Jane couple is expected to be introduced in season 2. Anora's Mark Edelstein, who was cast in late 2024, is expected for the John role, and for the Jane role, originally it was going to be Sophie Thatcher, but instead Talia Ryder is actually stepping in. I think there was scheduling issues, and that's why they've stepped in. I loved Mr. and Mrs. Smith. That was one of our very first episodes that we did for this podcast. A fantastic show, endlessly entertaining, and how it's bending genres and just such a fun TV version of a film that was very, is it cool to say controversial? Or is it okay to say that movie was controversial, Mr. and Mrs. Smith? I think so. There was a lot of sort of drama behind the scenes on that movie, but I love the TV show version. I think Donald Glover and Maya Erskine are just fantastic together. They have dynamite chemistry. I'm excited to see the younger couple coming in with Mark Edelstein and Talia Ryder. I think they could be a really great dynamic duo. What the season 2 premise is, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe it's going to be the two young agents come and they find them in the hallway, Maya Erskine and Donald Glover, and they're like, no, like we don't want to get involved. We're trying to get out of this or something along those lines. And then it's maybe all of them against the Ojai situation, or what do you call it? Like the Ojai or Hi. Is that what the company is? Hi. Because every time they scan it, it's like hi. I would love to see maybe the two couples teaming up because they're a younger John and Jane Smith that are sort of a little more impressionable. I love this show so much. It's really like up there with Beef, which actually restarted this week on season 2. I haven't watched it yet. I'm very excited to watch it though. I will get to it next week, but this is great news. I was very unclear what's going on with season 2. I know they've had a ton of production issues. They've had delays, things like that. So I'm happy to see it is back on track, but let's get into our final story. Adria Arjona has apparently been cast in Superman, Man of Tomorrow, the sequel to Superman from just last year. Now, it is not clear what her role actually is. Variety were hesitant to say that she is playing Maxima. Deadline, on the other hand, said following a round of auditions last week, Adria Arjona has landed the role of Maxima in the upcoming Superman sequel, Man of Tomorrow, from DC Studios. James Gunn is directing, producing, and penned the script with David Cornsweet back as the Man of Steel, whereas Variety said, I think they had a title that was something along the lines of Maximum Wonder, because her roles, it's potentially Wonder Woman, but it might also just be Maxima because that's who they've been casting for several weeks now. I also saw that, what's her name from Alien Earth was cast, Kyle Chandler's daughter. I cannot remember her name right now, but she was cast in Creature Commando season 2, which I think is very fun. I'm very excited for Creature Commandos because I love the first season of that show. Incredibly fun, super inventive storytelling, how we're getting the origins of all these characters at the same time while the story is moving forward. As for Adria Arjona, I have wanted her to join DC Studios since the very start. I think she is like one of my favorite actresses out there right now that just pops up in so much good stuff. So it's cool to see her getting a big action role like this. It seems like outside of Andor, she is mainly getting a lot of sort of smaller roles where she's on the side as just a love interest. But if she is Wonder Woman, obviously this is going to be a big role that she is stepping into and she's going to be filling for years. And that is a very important thing. So very excited for her. I'm liking how that movie is shaping up. It's actually starting, I think it's going to start filming in the next couple of weeks. We got our first look at David Cornsweet and Mr. Irrelevant, but now he's in full Superman mode again. Adria Arjona could be a fun villain Maxima, or if she's Wonder Woman, I think should be equally as great. And I think that'll do it for the news this week. Again, before we get into Lee Cronin's The Mummy, timestamps below. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, so you can listen to the non-spoiler section, then jump to what else I watched because we have a lot of TV to talk about, including the Pitt season finale and Little Miss Sunshine, which I rewatched this week. But let's do it. Let's talk about Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Lee Cronin's The Mummy is a 2026 horror supernatural film coming in at 2 hours, 14 minutes. Little bit of a jump ahead, but it is way too long. Currently has 6.5 on IMDb, 45% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 77% audience score, 2.9 average rating on Letterboxd with 3 stars as the mode. Film is directed and written by Lee Cronin on a budget of $22 million. Here is a synopsis for Lee Cronin's The Mummy. The young daughter of a journalist disappears into the desert without a trace. 8 years later, the broken family is shocked when she is returned to them as what should be a joyful reunion turns into a living nightmare. The film stars Jack Rayner as Charlie Cannon, who you might know from Midsummer, Leia Costa as Larissa Cannon, May Kalamaui, who is Detective Dahlia Zaki. You might know her from Moon Knight. She was also supposed to be in Gladiator 2, massively cut out of it. Natalie Grace as Katie Cannon, Shiloh Molina as Sebastian Cannon, Billy Roy as Maud Cannon, and Veronica Falcon as Carmen Santiago. We also have Hayat Kamil as the magician and May Eledi as Layla Khalil. But here we go. Here are my initial thoughts on Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Well, sometimes you get your hopes up for a movie. Sometimes you have your hopes on the floor going into a movie. And this movie met my expectations, but they were the expectations that were on the floor. I thought The Mummy was nothing particularly interesting. And it's just kind of a film that doesn't have anything new to bring to the table. It feels like it's trying to be something that it's not. It's not offering you any interesting, fresh, new ideas of like, oh, they tried to reboot it before, but here's how they should have done it. Instead, it's like, oh man, we shouldn't have done this again. And it just feels instantly regrettable as you're watching it, if that makes sense. Like, it's just, you're halfway through. It's been a slog for the first half of the movie, and you're like, dear God, why are we doing this all again? Why are we setting all of this up? And it just feels so unnecessary, especially when they're going to do The Mummy 5 with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz coming back. He's not in this movie. I hope people don't even expect that. They've been tweeting it every single day. Lee Cronin's The Mummy Twitter account. My theater reaction, like I said, I saw this at 9:20 p.m. on a Friday night. It was, I don't know, not very full. I would say maybe 10 to 15 people. It was fine. I mean, it was a typical 9:20 p.m. showing on a Friday night for a horror movie. There were 3 loud teenagers sitting towards the front. One of them was recording so many of the scenes. Like, when are you going to watch any of that back? I would never record a film in a theater and then while you're at home and you're looking at your videos that you took in the movie theater. Just kind of stupid to me. Seems like they were enjoying it. They were, talking a lot, and they were sort of like all have huge reactions. There are some funny and sort of tongue-in-cheek moments in this movie that did get a reaction from my crowd, and even me. I laughed a couple times. There's some good jokes in here, but overall, I don't think anybody was really coming out of the room a changed moviegoer or a film consumer. Let's talk about the performances like we do every time at the start of the review. Let's begin with Jack Reynor as Charlie, who plays the grieved father of the family. He's a journalist when they're living in Egypt at the start of the film for a local TV station. Their plan is to go back to the United States, and he's going to work at this breakfast show in New York City. Instead, because their daughter goes missing, he works at a local TV station pretty much in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they move back to his wife's childhood home. So it's very much about a dad that is disappointed with his life and is maybe blaming himself, unwilling to process what's happening, grasping at straws. It's pretty much hitting all the familiar bases. Like, it's not presenting anything you haven't seen before. I don't think there's anything particularly fresh about his character dynamics with his wife or how he's written as a father and his relationship with his daughter, who comes back to him deformed and ill and looks completely different, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. But I think it's very surface level, and that's what's going to be a familiar term in this review today, is surface level. Same with Leia Costa as Larissa, Jack's wife. Felt super shallow and just lost in the text. I think there isn't really a way in for her in this movie. They have this sort of argument between the two of them that they can't properly take care of their daughter at home, so it's trying to dive into these themes of being able to care for your own children and questioning whether you can and whether you can bring them back from whatever illness or ailments that they are suffering from. And I don't know, some of that stuff is interesting, what they're trying to get at with her performance and Jack Raynor's performance, but I think it is just far too, again, surface level. There's not enough there to really make us invested or believe these people that they are struggling. It feels like it's all trying to lead up to something far less greater than they could have ever hoped for. One performance that I did actually surprisingly enjoy a lot was May Kalamawi as Detective Zaki. I want to know the phone plan they had, because she lives in Cairo. She's a police officer, a detective living in Cairo, and she is calling them in Albuquerque, New Mexico almost every day. I am genuinely curious how much money that would cost, because that is so much money to call across the world like that. But I liked her character. I was actually very interested in this little Cairo detective station where it felt like the story was much more richer, and there's like department struggles and all of these people that have differing levels of sort of belief and questioning Jack Reynor and his wife, played by Leia Costa, because when they first come to them, they're like, oh, did you murder your daughter? Or they're starting to suspect that maybe these parents aren't telling the truth, and they feel brushed off by the police. Then it's 8 years later when they come back, and Detective Zaki has to get back onto the case, and it's a very, very, very good foundation foundation to start off of, but it doesn't feel explored enough. Again, surface level. Natalie Grace as Katie, I mean, it's important probably to talk about her because she is playing the main sort of, not villain, but the monster of this movie, I guess. She's very invested. She's fully going for it. There's some very gruesome stuff and body contortion or physical work that she's doing that I think is impressive, but she just feels like kind of another creepy child monster demon type thing, whether it is, you know, The Orphan and all of those movies or any horror movie where there's a kid that's haunted. I think it's very much in that wheelhouse and it's not presenting anything particularly interesting to us. A lot like Lee Cronin's directing. I think, look, he isn't a bad director by any means. I know people love his Evil Dead movie that came out a couple years ago, right? Evil Dead Rise. And so he is known a little bit for maybe reinvigorating a franchise, and it is able to be done. But I think his energy just feels put into the wrong place here. It just feels not necessary at all. Like I said in my introduction, this is a movie that halfway through I was like, why are we doing this again? Like what good is coming out of this? We're not setting up anything particularly inventive. We're not bringing new life into this franchise of like, ooh, this could really be something. You know, you look at the movies that have been rebooted or the franchises that have been rebooted over the years, and I think Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is a film franchise that often comes to my mind because Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was such a fantastic setup for this new trilogy that is using the previous trilogy as lore, and it's like almost a religious treatment in how we are praising those previous films, but also how Caesar's legacy lives on. And I really, really enjoyed all of that and how respectful it was of the previous source material, but also living up to the name of the source material and really leaning into it with a new twist on it with these new gangs of gorillas or apes. And this movie, I guess it's only related to the Mummy franchise in name and the fact that there is a mummy in it or there's mummies in it. Other than that, I don't really understand why we are getting Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Just write a mummy movie that's not related to the franchise at all. Just write I don't know, is it a copyright thing? Is it a rights issue that you can't write movies about mummies without the distributors coming after you or whoever owns the rights? I can't remember what studio it is that actually owns the rights to this, but it's just an odd choice. I don't really understand the career move that Lee Cronin is making here. Like Wes Ball in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, it felt like he had something to say about this franchise and a new direction to take it with the hardcore, dogmatic, religious underlings that are happening around Caesar. Whereas this movie, there's no relation. It's simply related in name by just being Lee Cronin's The Mummy, and an awful title as well. The story, it's The Mummy, like everybody would expect. It's, you know, a mythology. It's taking Egyptian history, ancient Egyptian history, but instead we're making it as American as possible. This movie is so blandly American. Everything's happening in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Very little is happening in Cairo, which to me were the most interesting parts of the movie. You know, the film opens with the family living in Cairo because Charlie is a news correspondent there, and I actually would have really enjoyed the story fully taking place there, where they are living in Cairo 8 years later when Katie comes back, and it's more of a boots on the ground chase trying to understand what's happening locally rather than being back in Albuquerque, New Mexico and feeling incredibly sequestered to the house that they're living in. It feels like not a lot is happening outside of the household, and whatever does happen outside of the household is the most interesting stuff, you know, and it's the most heartfelt or the most motivated stuff, specifically with Detective Zaki. Those were the parts of the movie that I was most interested in. And perhaps the film should have had her as the main character because she feels the most developed. It feels like she's actually trying to achieve something because she's working in this department where it's about a missing persons department, I guess is actually what it's called. And they have a huge issue where most of the time when they're finding missing persons, they are not alive and they are mostly just finding bodies. So she's trying to change that by finding people who are still alive and reuniting loved ones. And there's a real motivation there that I don't think we have with the family. You never really feel anything with the family or anything worthwhile that's going to be close to any form of motivation. So I would have really enjoyed a movie focused on May Kalamaui as Detective Zaki in Egypt, in Cairo, going to these different places as an Egyptian woman, interacting with Egyptian history in her own country, rather than Albuquerque, New Mexico. We have a news correspondent going to, you know, a professor in a university or whatever for like 2 scenes. Randomly, a professor shows up. I don't think that's a spoiler to say, yes, he asks an expert about their opinion. So just kind of strange character choices, a lot of really weird story choices here. And many people online, you know, I was trying to get a gauge of what are others saying saying online. I've not seen Evil Dead Rise. I've not seen any of the Exorcist movies, but I'm shocked by how many comments were one after another just saying, wow, this is exactly like an Evil Dead movie or an Exorcist movie. This is so sort of out of personality for the Mummy franchise and feels way more in line with those franchises. So why not just make a sequel in those franchises? And you do have to ask the question, why not just make Evil Dead Egypt, Evil Dead Sand, whatever it might be, or The Exorcist New Sarcophagus or something like that, you know? Is it not fully original? Does it feel like its own? No, it doesn't. It feels like a movie that is trying to shoe in to a franchise but doesn't know how to do it because it's unsure of itself. It's unsure if people want this as well. This does not feel like a movie where it's a storyteller being like, okay, this is the one everyone's been waiting for. This feels like a movie where, I don't know, it's like, oh, we'll take a shot at it, but I don't really know if people are going to like this, if people care at all, and it doesn't feel very assured of itself. It also reminded me of Bring Her Back from last year, the Philippe brothers, in a lot of the character dynamics that are going on of protecting this child who has come back and been haunted, and the violence that's happening with children in particular. If it makes you squeamish to see children be violent, this is definitely not the film for you. So both on a subject matter and an actual what we are seeing stunt wise, very much Bring Her Back from the Philippe brothers. But I cannot talk about this movie without talking about the visuals, because oh my god, Dave Garbett, who did the cinematography for this film, he's also worked on, it's a Netflix show, right, called Sweet Tooth. There are at least 20 split diopter shots in this movie, nearly every single scene split diopter shot, and it's in the most unimportant, unflashy, boring ways. There's no need for them. There's tons of moments where it's simply just someone, you know, holding a hand, and then we have a face in the foreground, and it just feels very unnecessary. Or at one point, Maya Kalamawi is like turning on an old TV because she has a VCR hooked up to it to watch a tape, and she's turning the volume knob, and we see both the remote and the volume knob in a split diopter shot, and it's like, what is this achieving? Why do we need this weird little inclusion when split diopter shots are so much fun? It's like everybody's favorite sort of shot style in a film. Everybody loves a split diopter shot, but this movie is just taking it, almost taking advantage of it. It feels so uninventive. It feels like, okay, just throw one in there, and very overindulgent. I also think this movie is incredibly bland looking. It is gray, it's mushy, it feels sort of smudgy and just ugly. There's so much brown in the house in Albuquerque. It does like the classic New Mexico lighting kinda. There was so much visually about this movie that I didn't like, and there are a few CGI moments that I was like, oh, that's horrible, particularly in the third act. There's one big house sequence where I was like, this looks so bad. We're almost getting Scorpion King levels of CGI here. But to give this movie some credit, there are also some practical effects that work really well, and some of the gruesome violence obviously looks good. I think they did put proper effort into making this movie as gross as possible, because there were numerous occasions where I was a little bit uncomfortable. I did get very squeamish. I am not a body horror fan. I don't like body horror in general. The Pitt season finale had a very hard scene for me to get through, including a pregnancy, and stuff like that makes me so squeamish. There were a couple moments in The Mummy that made me like that as well. But that being said, as squeamish and as effective as the violence is, I think a lot of the violence in this film felt very empty to me. This movie is a very graphic. Yes, it does a great job of that, like I said, with the practical effects, but so much of it feels very unmotivated and kind of just going for shock value, or kind of just going for, well, we got to do something because it's a Mummy movie. We want to make it gross. We want people to react, but it doesn't know why it's doing these things. And a lot of the action that is the result of things happening feels very stupid. Like I have to say, these are two particularly stupid horror movie parents. If you think all the movies in the Halloween franchise have stupid parents, or the Scream franchise, just you wait, because Lee Cronin's The Mummy has some extremely stupid parents who are just no clue what they're doing with their daughter. Like, oh, that toenail was impossible to clip off and it nearly snapped my clippers. Better go for this other one after the previous one ripped off. It's like, what are you thinking? You are a bad mother. And some of the violence is also just very silly or cruel. There's a lot of licking and slurping in this movie. Lee Cronin seems particularly fascinated by disgusting people, slurping things up, licking things up, coughing on people, and a lot of like ASMR sounds that I don't like. And it's like, ugh, that's so gross. Like someone licks a toe underneath a door at one point, and it's like, what the fuck? Who thinks thinks of that. But okay, back to a few story things before we get to 2 stars and a wish and the spoiler section. Character development. I think this is supposed to be a film about a family grieving, but I hardly felt like I knew anyone in this family. Sure, they sort of dive into the character dynamics a little bit, but it felt incredibly underdeveloped. Again, shallow. It feels surface level. The father, he is simply a journalist, but does he actually work half the time? Not really. The mother's a nurse. She's never going to work, so I guess they're both just taking time off for the entire movie. I had absolutely no connection to the family members. I understand that they're trying to like recover and come together to be there for Katie, their daughter that they found, or their sister that they found after 8 years, but it just feels so underdeveloped. There's nothing that's emotionally tying you into this film. And the film's runtime, I mean, this movie just does not stop. There's a whole other ending to this movie that I was like, oh my God, it's not over yet. It would have been absolutely fine if they stopped where they did. Instead, the final scene, I'm like, okay, I guess that makes sense, but it feels like a false ending sort of. And there's many points where the editing of the film completely confused me. I felt like I had missed scenes and I didn't get up to go to the bathroom during this movie. I was like, wait, when did that start? Or when was that spoken about? Or what is this decision that they're making right now? There's a lot of real head scratching moments, moments in this movie where you feel like you missed something, or was there a context that I missed here? No, it's just that the characters jump to very strange conclusions in this movie. Tonally, I think it's a little bit all over the place. There's trying to be these like jokey, corny moments and then earnest moments. I think it doesn't really know if it wants to be this sort of 80s horror cheesy movie or if it's trying to be this like gritty 21st century horror film that's rebooting this franchise. Like there's a moment when Katie comes home, they take her out of the car, they put her in a wheelchair, and then they bring her upstairs. But the way they drag her in the wheelchair upstairs is hilarious. I was laughing the entire time because it's like thump, and they're just throwing her up the stairs. And again, is this a joke? Are we supposed to be laughing at this? I don't know. It's not very clear, but it's so awkward. And a lot of this movie is just kind of awkward and stuck in these in-between spaces. Let's get into the themes of this movie, then we'll do 2 stars and a wish. So the themes are really about grieving the loss of a child and grasping for answers with the unexplainable, whether it is missing children. I mean, they explicitly mention child trafficking in this film. That is pretty much what this movie is sort of going on about. It's about parents who lose their children, end up losing themselves, are trying to grieve the process and bring back love into their homes, but it's a long road. That is what Lee Cronin's The Mummy is about. Now, here are my 2 stars and a wish for Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Star number 1, there's a few squeamish moments where you can feel a movie in there of like, yeah, in another franchise or in an original story, this could be a good story. This could be a good director who is doing fun action, horror, gory stuff that could be entertaining. Star number 2, the daughter gets to go a little bit nuts. I always like when child actors get to go crazy in movies and are really bought into their performances. They don't feel like child actors. Like I would say the Katie actress was very good. The brother and sister of Katie, very hokey and cheesy. My wish, trim down this movie. There could be 30 minutes off of Lee Cronin's The Mummy. It is far too long. No way we need a 2-hour, 15-minute movie of this subject matter. But look, overall, I think Lee Cronin's The Mummy, like I said, is another unnecessary Hollywood reboot. I don't think it's the biggest misfire. Like we've definitely had way worse reboots in the last few years, but it just feels unnecessary at every single step. I'm happy they're at least not trying to make a larger universe like past films have, like the Tom Cruise one, but I gave Lee Cronin's The Mummy a 2.5 out of 5. I thought it was flat. I thought it was floppy. Let's get into spoilers. All right, let's talk some spoilers for Lee Cronin's The Mummy. So we open on this family that is driving in the desert. They're going back to their home, which is on a nectarine farm. And, you know, the family are singing. They're having fun. The husband's sort of teasing the kids and they're all having a good time when suddenly, like, the mom, who we notice has this very impressive, detailed hand tattoo, says, "Oh, you guys are giving me a headache." Immediately, the vibes are kind of off. When they get home, there's a dead bird in a cage and the daughter's like, "Mom, can you bring her back?" That is the establishment of this family who can bring dead things back to life, I suppose, through the mummification process. Or she's a witch. I guess she is a witch that can just bring people back from the dead and has these magic spells. And her family, it's revealed at the 3rd act, the family has secretly been containing this Egyptian curse that has been, you know, loose 3,000 years ago. But since then, they've learned learned that by sacrificing someone, I can't remember how often it was, but they've sacrificed 82 people to contain this curse for years. So that's why Katie is abducted, because the more innocent the child, the longer they last, is what she says. And her own daughter tries to fight back against that. So it's a very interesting family dynamic that we see at the start. Again, I think there is a case here where Detective Zaki and this family could have been much more interesting of a dynamic happening within Egypt if we did just go full Egyptian mummy movie, May Kalamawi as the lead, and then maybe the American family is like a side plot type thing, or they're supporting characters that happen to have a child abducted, and that's why May Kalamawi has to help them. But then you don't have to have a movie fully in subtitles. It can be partially in English, so all you Americans can happily consume a movie about the Mummy franchise. But anyways, I thought it was a very interesting opening. I was sort of like, okay, I see something here in that they are a family that has the hidden secrets, and they are secretly controlling like this sort of underlying world, but it's not trying to set up this entire universe changing thing. Like, it's not trying to sort of reach or grasp for anything that is more than itself. But again, I was a little bit confused how the bird had to play anything into that, because they don't actually bring the bird back to life. I was like, wait, so is the bird back to life? Like, why'd the child ask that? I guess the mom has magical powers because she does present this nectarine to Katie at the fence that has this poisonous bug in it. So is she just a straight up witch? Is that what I meant to understand here? I think so. That's what I went with. But I did like the introduction to Katie and Charlie. Katie is a very smart girl who's in the Egyptian sort of equivalent of Girl Scouts, I guess, and she's practicing Morse code. Unfortunately, the way the movie introduces a lot of sort of technical things like Morse code or dropping something from a ledge, you can tell that's going to be important later. Pay attention for that later. Anytime there were like certain pattern beats in the movie, I was like, okay, that's going to be Morse code. And I was correct. Katie was, with her teeth chattering, she was tapping Morse code to her father to send the code Layla, which is the name of the daughter of the witch. So she's trying to say the family in Egypt that, abducted her. Katie's still in there, I guess, is sort of the big point of that scene, that Katie is still at least cognizant and can process what's happening around her. She's just sort of shrouded in this horrible demon or ancient Egyptian spirit type thing. So I like those little hints that they're going for, but it feels so telegraphed, which is another sort of, old fashioned communication style. But immediately, okay, the Morse code thing's going to be important. The brother dropping this off of a ledge and everybody looking down at the ledge, which, oh my God, when they're looking down off the ledge because the brother drops that baby doll off of the ledge, it looked just like that episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where the McPoyles take the gang hostage in the bar and then they drop them off the roof and they're all looking down and Frank comes off the side. Oh, no, you don't. And it was just like, oh my God, this could be a side-by-side comparison. I would love to see someone make a meme where they mix in those two scenes of them all looking down and the McPoyles looking up. That would be revolutionary. But again, there's these little technical elements in the film that are introduced that you just know are going to pay off later. I mean, the Morse code's the first one, but then the doll, I guess I'll tell you how it pays off, obviously, because we're in spoilers now. I can. Looking down onto the doll is meant to look the same later when Grandma is pushed out of the window by Katie once she goes insane in her bedroom and goes nuts on Grandma because she keeps praying for her. She haunts her. She jumps out of the window, or she's pushed out of the window, and we're looking down her as all these coyotes that are staying near their house to protect Katie start eating her insides. I thought the CGI in that scene was absolutely horrible. The coyotes looked like the Frankenstein werewolves, or coyotes, I guess you could say, as well, where it's like, oh, that's so badly composed. And the rest of this movie, it just feels very not fitting on the entire thing. You could really tell that they're like, oh, those are some very computer animated coyotes right there. But the grandma scene, it's meant to be this huge twist where Katie has finally taken one of her own from the family. And that's sort of the jumping point for the end of the movie of grief taking over people. I think one of the main themes that this movie is trying to be is like, oh, grief takes over everyone in different ways and in violent ways, and grief can take over us in violent ways. First we have dad who is sort of turning on his wife, and mom and dad are fighting, and they're starting to split apart as a team when they're meant to be this united front as husband and wife. Then we have grandma who's trying to pray for the daughter. The daughter headbutts her and breaks her nose. So clearly it's this like religious rejection that even my faith won't help help because grief is against faith in some weird battle there. I think there's like a little theme going on there. We have the little sister who's scared of her older sister now because she doesn't know her. She's never met her before. The wife was pregnant when Katie went missing, so the youngest is 8 years old exactly. And then we have her brother, I guess a baby brother, although I feel like they're very close in age if he's supposed to be roughly the same age. But the point is, like, everybody in the family is slowly dealing with their issues with Katie or their fear and their grief around Katie of life never being the same in some way or another. And I think it's almost working a little bit. Like it is trying to do something here, but it just does it in a really bland way because we don't feel like we know any of the family members. It's not developed enough to be like, oh, well, dad, way back in the day had this one issue, or mom way back in the way. There's more character introduction for the house that they're living in with, I believe it's the wife's house. It's her family home that she grew up in, and that's why grandma lives with them now. It's just there's some very strange family dynamics going on here that aren't developed enough. They don't feel deep enough. It's sort of all shock with no deeper underlying things to care about. Now, Layla, the big code, is not the witch. That is, Layla is the child that she was friends with, Katie, back in Egypt, and her mom, the witch, would bring her candy every single day. She sort of lures her in like a Snow White apple situation, gets her to eat the nectarine. I think that scene's sort of interesting because it is very Snow White and it's like referencing this past thing. And there are a lot of sort of past references, a lot of homages or referring to other properties that you can tell he's really a fan of. But at the same time, I feel like we don't see enough of the witch stuff throughout the movie because that's the way more interesting part of this film to me than yet another child is haunted and child comes back changed forever movie like we got with Bring Her Back last year. We've gotten it in so many horror movies. I think the biggest detriment, and I'm going to talk about it for the 100th time, is that the Egyptian stuff and the detective stuff, everything happening in Cairo and back in Egypt on the Nectarine Far, is 1,000 times more interesting than this family that we don't know. The only point in where it really gets somewhat exciting, I'll say, in the American context is the third act. Like, yes, it's a big, messy, ugly house CGI battle at the end where random shit's flying everywhere and it gets a little bit smudgy and smoky CGI-ness. But you know what? I do think it sort of picks up the pace at the end with the funeral and the entire family kind of being haunted in these ways, or the parents, I guess it's more so the parents are trying not to lose more family members to death or to this darkness that is taking over their home, because the husband and wife are the only ones that don't really get haunted by Katie towards the end of the film. We have grandma, the brother, and the sister. All three of them are taken over by Katie, but it's the parents trying to hold the household together. So there's some themes there that are being developed. The ending, I don't know, it ends in a massive fight where the dad, of course, takes the ultimate sacrifice of taking the grief and sort of taking the blame and accepting ownership for what's happened to his child. He takes on the demon, and I thought, okay, that could be an ending right there. I feel like that's probably as far as this needs to go. Then we get an entire other scene where they magically go back to Cairo. Okay, hold on. Let me back up first, because somehow Detective Zaki made it to Albuquerque, New Mexico in almost little to no time. She must have been flying supersonically. She shows up on their doorstep, is part of the big third act household fight. How did she know they have a VCR player? She brings the tape with Katie's process of her mummification on it, which I thought was a pretty fun found footage type thing that they put into the film. So I'll give it credit there. But like, how did you show up to Albuquerque, New Mexico so fast? I was shocked by that. But regardless, she shows up in the third act. Then they go back to Egypt with her and the husband, who is now mummified. They give the demon, of course, it's alluded to because they close the cell door. We don't actually see it, but clearly he gives the demon back to the witch. She now contains it. She's the one that's being mummified. So I guess things are solved forever. Like, it sort of wrapped up, no pun intended. Oh God, that was really bad. I knew there'd be a mummy pun somewhere in here. It feels all a little bit too simple, straightforward. I will give the movie credit that it's not trying to set up this larger universe like, oh, the Invisible Man or werewolf or Dracula. No, this is just a mummy movie. We're stopping it here. That's it. That's all we're going to get from this. And that's fine. I think I can live with that bland reboot that we've had a billion of in Hollywood, but at least it's not trying to start a new MCU. It's a director just being like, yeah, I want to make one of these, but it doesn't need to lead to anything else. I think that's pretty harmless in my eyes. But okay, I think that's all I have for spoilers. I mean, other than that, I thought it was kind of crazy when Katie came back and she looks like a fake human almost. Like, she looks like a doll dressed up, and it's very off-putting, makeup and her hair done and stuff like that. I was like, oh, she looks like a fake person. It's kind of terrifying. Grandma's still dead. She doesn't come back. They're all playing board games together with dad inside the tomb. Katie has the nice nice Morse code moment. I thought that was a little bit sweet, but otherwise, very boring ending. I think the only highlight really of this movie, all the Egyptian parts. I'm done with Lee Cronin's The Mummy. We're not done with this franchise because we are getting the 5th Mummy movie with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz next year or in a couple years. I will watch them all before then, but for now, let's get into what else I watched. Alrighty, what else I watched? I have 2 books, 4 TV shows, and 3 movies to talk about. Let's start with the books. I have read up to page 230, 250 around then in Project Hail Mary. It's getting real good. It was a crazy week and I was really struggling to find time to read it all because I was just on my feet like 13 hours a day doing stuff. But you know what? I now have a little bit of free time. I'm going to try and breeze through it in the next like 2 or 3 weeks because it's so good. It's full of heart. It's full of love. Fantastic. And then I finally read a comic book last week. I read The Dark Knight Volume 2, Cycle of Violence, which is a story involving Scarecrow's origins, which I feel like we don't really see enough of. I love Scarecrow. Scarecrow's probably one of my favorite Batman villains. I don't know. He's probably top 3. Scarecrow just has a specific sort of special place in my heart. Maybe because of Batman Begins, because Scarecrow, Jonathan Crane is the villain in that movie. That was the first Batman movie I ever saw in theaters at 5 years old with my dad. So I have a really special place in my heart for Batman Begins. And I think Scarecrow is so well done in that movie. So really great book with the origins of Bruce Wayne as a child trying to deal with his parents' death. And then Jonathan Crane also grieving really with the childhood that he went through where his dad was doing experiments on him. And it's just a fascinating story that I really, really, really enjoyed. But let's talk about some TV shows. The Boys season 5, episode 1 and 2. I'm not going to talk too in depth about this because I don't want to spoil anything, but it is so good. I think season 4 was entertaining enough. Like 4 was moving the story along a little bit. I don't think it moved the needle too much, but season 5, big things are happening every single episode. I'm very excited to watch episode 3. I didn't get to Daredevil this week because I was really focused on, okay, I need to watch The Boys anytime I have time. And it's a great final season. I think they're wrapping up some fascinating stuff. I forgot how good Anthony Starr is as Homelander. Like, oh my God, I was in stitches laughing within the first 20 minutes of him because he is just so ridiculous. He's so, I don't know, his temper is crazy and the boys are just hilarious to watch all of them together, whether it is Kumiko finally being able to talk is really cool. But yeah, great season so far. But let's talk about some Survivor, shall we? Survivor season 34, Game Changers. We watched episodes 2 to 5. We are approaching the very next episode actually is the episode where Zeke is outed to the group by Jeff Varner. Very uncomfortable episode that I have to say is one of the moments in history that Survivor actually handled well when it comes to how their contestants are feeling and protecting them and walking along the steps with Zeke and letting him have a choice in it. We just had Sandra go home in the previous episode, you know, the queen stays queen, all that stuff. She's one of the only 2-time Survivor winners. And this season, we're not going to have a 2-time Survivor winner on 50 because this week in episode 8 of Survivor 50, we had Coach and Chrissy voted out in the double duo elimination twist. So essentially, there's so many rules involved in this twist as well. Everybody had to pair up, and then there was an odd number of people. So Sari didn't get into a partnership. She got to go to exile. She would have been safe from the vote. Instead, she did a challenge there to come back. Controlled the vote. Of course, Sari is winning this season. I think it's like written in the stars. She's doing so well. But as for the actual pairings, it was interesting that Joe and Tiff went together when Joe is in the alliance that just voted for Tiff the day before. And he even wrote Tiff's name down. You know, he was one of the ones that was guilty as charged. So Coach and Chrissy going together, I didn't really understand because they have similar skill sets, I want to say, and that Coach is older, Chrissy's older. They're both more, I would say, reserved when it comes to the challenges. I mean, Chrissy is amazing at puzzles, but she's definitely not a physical threat. Coach is old. He's not a physical threat. I don't think he can really last like a lot of people anymore. So very strange partnership. I love that Rick Devens finally pulled out the idol or the fake idol that he made and put at tribal council. I was listening to Tyson's podcast where they were interviewing Coach. Chrissy apparently refused to do exit press, so I don't know what that says about her, but Coach says he thinks it was always going to be him. And then Tyson also asked a couple of other people that were involved in the vote, was it always going to be Coach and Chrissy, or did Rick Devens' fake idol play actually make a difference difference. And what they said was that it was always going to be coaching Chrissy, and that the idol play made very little, any type of change on people's opinions. I think the only one probably that may have switched is Chrissy herself. She voted for Rizzo and Emily, and I think maybe that's because she was like, okay, if this is a real idol that Rick Devens has, he'll use it. Coach is playing his shot in the dark. Theoretically, if we were both safe because our shot in the dark works, his idol is real, then who's going to get voted out? Who's going to go home? Is it going to be someone random? Why not throw a vote out there and I can control who goes home? So it's kind of a smart play, but I thought episode 8 was maybe the best episode of the season so far. It was just a fantastic twist. I really like the dynamic duo thing, or the dynamic, or the double duo. What are the, double elimination duo. I thought it really worked. I don't understand how they're deciding who came 13th, who came 12th. Is it just based on alphabetical order or something like that? But overall, great episode of Survivor. Let's talk about the Pitt season 2 finale. Skip ahead, I would say 2 minutes if you don't want to know anything about the Pitt season finale. But for me, this season finale really worked. I liked everything that they built up, everything they paid off. The only little snag that I was like, was Dr. Mohan's farewell. I think it was incredibly rushed, incredibly condensed. Felt like there was a lot that was cut out. But I will say, they did a poor job developing her in both season 1 and season 2. I found in season 1, she was kind of just simple in the way that like, oh, I don't have a life and that's it. Season 2, exact same thing. So I'm sad that she's going, but at the same time, I think there's a few of the night shift people that could be far more interesting and I think could really bring something new to the cast because they are actual like higher ups along with Robbie and Abbott. So I'm excited for season 3. I think it's going to be a great cast shakeup. I know they're already confirming some of the people that are coming back. We'll see how it all actually unfolds. But yeah, I think the Robbie moment in the finale was really gorgeous. Him and baby Jane Doe and him saying, I was abandoned once too by my parents, and sort of talking to himself in some ways through baby Jane Doe. Well, I think it was very overt with him holding a child being like, it's all going to be okay. You're going to do great things because there's so much love in this world and he doesn't want to lose his life. I really loved Dr. Abbott confronting him, being like, no, you have to come back. Like, we depend on you. There's so much horrible shit in this world, but you got to look at the beauty of where we are and how we're working. And it's just, it's so nice to see positive talk between two men. One of them has suicidal thoughts. Last season, it was the same thing where Dr. Abbott was literally going to end it all. And I actually forgot he has a prosthetic leg until he brought it up. I was like, oh yeah, they don't really address that very often, but super great season finale. I loved how it wrapped up with them all watching the fireworks and sort of seeing how America is crumbling and they're just all exhausted and they're beaten down by the system. I think it's setting up a lot of really great things for season 3. So that has been the Pitt season 2. I can't believe it's been 15 weeks since it started. I'm excited to rewatch it all again, but let's move into some movies, shall we? So I have 3 movies to talk about this week. One of them I have never seen. One of them I have not watched in probably 10 years. One of them I've probably not watched in 7 or 8 years. So let's start with Outcome, the new Jonah Hill film for Apple TV. I would say this is hardly a movie. I mean, it's a very slim 84 minutes. It feels malnourished as a screenplay. There's not a lot going on here. Very narcissistic, half-assed ideas, and it's very mean-spirited. I think there's a lot of hate behind this movie and someone trying to score and like sort of come even with everyone around them because they're mad at the world, and weirdly composed green screen shots on the beach that I was like, oh, this film is just kind of ugly. It just has an ugly sheen to it. The tone fluctuates between Jerry Seinfeld's Frosted and something far more legitimate like Todd Field's Tar. And unfortunately, there's just a huge wide chasm between the two of them that you're left with, and you're just like discombobulated. You're wondering, what is this vanity project meant to accomplish for Jonah Hill, who is like proudly, I don't know, announcing that he has been canceled and he's wearing it as a badge of honor, and his veneers are so distracting in this film. There's no doubt that, Jonah Hill has struggled with fame and the pressures that fame has presented, but this is a pathetic attempt to say, oh, we're all psychopaths. You can't just act on it because you're poor. Meanwhile, I'm rich. I'm the victim here because I have wealth and success. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. Everybody has responsibility in the world. Everybody has responsibility and is held up to the same standards of being terrible to other people. In fact, I think a lot of rich people are terrible to people and there's no repercussions for them. Jonah Hill is not hiding his cards at all. This is just another trick from the arsenal of other egoists like Ricky Gervais, who use their art to bombard the people in their personal lives who've criticized them. It's depressing, it's desperate, it's poorly assembled, and even for a project like this, I don't know, it just doesn't come together at all. I mean, the only thing that was keeping this from being 1 star was Marty Scorsese absolutely steals the show with a couple of scenes that he's in. I thought he was fantastic in this movie. Like, holy shit, what a performance. Scorsese can act. He is fantastic in outcome, but I gave the film 2 stars. Next up, we have Robert Eggers' The Witch, or The Vavitch. Last weekend, I was on a podcast, Some Like It Real, hosted by Brian and Veronica. Me and Claire were the guests in the A24 draft, and we talked about The Witch, and I was like, wow, I've not watched this in many years. I remember when I did watch it, when it came out, I couldn't sleep that night. I was very creeped out by a sort of cannibalizing family almost, or a family that's just destroying itself with religious paranoia. So I thought, you know what? I have the 4K. I haven't watched my 4K version of it, so I watched it this week. I forgot how much happens in this movie, how much messed up shit happens, like the son basically having an exorcism in the middle of the house and then the demon going away, but it is fantastic. I think this movie, so well made, one of the most like impressive directorial debuts. I mean, it's hard not to argue that Robert Eggers' The Witch is one of the strongest directorial debuts of the 21st century. He's like so easily capturing the desolate era of this new world and a 17th century family's religious paranoia and shame, all while using period accurate language and keeping it so accessible. I mean, it's dumbfounding how he pulls it all off. And Anya Taylor-Joy, she's been a star for many years now. This movie, the signs were there. She was always going to be absolutely fantastic. I gave it 4.5 stars. I'm going to watch The Lighthouse very soon, and then I'm going to watch The Northman, then I'll watch Nosferatu. I feel like going through Eggers' films, but the final film that I watched this week, Little Miss Sunshine, which I have now put into my Letterboxd top 4 because, oh my God, I forgot how moving this film is. I cried through so much of it. I think this movie is just so gorgeous. I've seen it many times. I distinctly remember the first time I watched it was in 2007 in Croatia when we went to the coast for a couple weeks. My cousin Luca showed it to me and it moved me. I was like, oh my God, this movie is magical. I rewatched it on Disney Plus, and I'm going to try and get the Blu-ray in the next couple days because it is just so gorgeous. I cannot believe this movie is 20 years old as well. Like, oh my God, where has the time gone? But rewatching Little Miss Sunshine on its 20th anniversary, the movie just means so much to me. You know, there's these stories about the great winners of the world, those who revolutionize the way that we understand our universe or live such lavish lives with bountiful wealth. But films like these about the years of struggle where we learn the most about ourselves, that's what I love. Those are movies like La La Land, where we're really in the dirty times of our lives, where we're struggling to make ends meet and we're having to find ourselves as a character. Movies like those I really, really, really loved. Like when Frank tells Dwight on that foggy Californian pier, we learn the most about ourselves in the horrible parts of our lives. And I know you wish you could sleep till it's over, but don't. You're going to be so boring and you're going to look back on this and be so happy. Every single family member in the movie as well is just such a great character. I think specifically the dad, Richard, who's so, I don't know, sold on his own self-help bullshit and is almost cruel at first when you meet him. Like the diner scene with the ice cream really breaks my heart. I don't know. He has this kind of beautiful character arc where he sees the beauty in the flaws of his own family and being a bit of a loser, and that, you know what, we're the real winners. Everyone else are the losers because they live these manufactured, spray tanned, fucked up lives. And I think a beauty pageant is just such a fantastic background for this film. So I gave Little Miss Sunshine 5 stars. I love it, love it, love it, love it so much. It is now in my Letterboxd top 4 along with The Batman, La La Land, and Dune Part 1. That has been what else I watched for this week. Next week we have some big movies to talk about. I'm watching a certain film for the very first time ever in IMAX on Monday. I'm excited to talk about it, but for now, that has been what else I watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 116 of Watcher of All Things, talking about Lee Cronin's The Mummy. What a disappointing Hollywood reboot. It's not particularly menacing or like a bad omen for the future. I think it's just another Blumhouse blunder that I wasn't really surprised by. But as always, please rate and review the show 5 stars wherever you get your great podcasts like Watcher of All Things, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Acast. We're, of course, an Acast produced show. If you're on Spotify, you can actually actually comment right underneath the episode. What'd you think of Lee Cronin's The Mummy? What movies were you watching this week? What TV shows were you watching this week? What do you think of Survivor 50? All of that good stuff. If you're on the YouTube channel, like, subscribe, comment down below as well. What movies are you looking forward to this summer? We have some really big ones coming soon. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email us, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, and find me on social media. Instagram and Threads are at watcherofallthings, and the TikTok account is at watcher.of.all.things. I post on social media every single day. I'm actually going to make a video right after this talking about my favorite things from CinemaCon or what I'm excited to see come out of CinemaCon. You can also follow my personal Letterboxd account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Follow me on there. Drop a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the show. I will follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, we have Michael, the Michael Jackson biopic by Antoine Fuqua. I have heard it is pretty meandering, kind of boring down the middle, so it's going to be interesting to see another Hollywood biopic, but that'll be next week. For now, thank you all so much for listening. I love hearing from new people every single week and getting to talk about all these different things with you guys. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.